Happy Saturday morning, December 12th, 2020. Welcome to Sports World Weekly. I'm Matt Jolis coming to you from our new virtual digs in Rhode Island. It is a privilege and a pleasure to be in the Ocean State full time now. We have moved the show to the mothership and joined the Ocean State and all of the great Rhode Islanders. And we look forward to what is going to be a very exciting 2021 for both this Sports World Weekly show, my daily show, and That's the Game, and for all of us here at SFBN Rhode Island. This is our next to last show of 2020. We will have one more show next weekend. We will be off on Boxing Day. Of course, don't forget to tune in on December 26th. The absolute slew of Premier League matches on Boxing Day, the traditional super day in the Premier League where everyone plays a game throughout the course of that day. So there's going to be a lot of action. And of course, we'll preview all those matches on next week's show and put a bow on what has been a very interesting year in 2020, not just a year in general, but obviously the year in sports as well. And we'll do our countdown of the 10 best moments. Some of them might be quite interesting. The 10 best moments in sports next of the 2020 year. We'll do that next week's show. But we get started as we do every Saturday morning when it is racing season with the F1 report. This is it, round 17. The Yas Marina race in Abu Dhabi, the conclusion of an abbreviated F1 season. The FIA has said they expect to run a full 23 and or 24 race schedule next season, including putting Canada, the US, Brazil, and Mexico back onto the F1 schedule. All four of those rounds and those countries were completely skipped this year due to the COVID-19 pandemic, but it couldn't go out without a bang, and so it did. Max Verstappen puts his Red Bull on the front row in P1. That is a pole position. He is the first since 2013 to be a non-Mercedes driver in P1 at Abu Dhabi. It was an insanity situation. He flat spotted on his original beginning segment in Q3, had to go into the pits, get new tires, get some adjustments, and then somehow, as Q3 got later into the evening in Abu Dhabi, Max Verstappen and his Red Bull seemed to get better. It is a bizarre thing, but that is just the way that racing cars go. Sometimes cars will tend to get better in different conditions. It seems to be as though the technicians in the Red Bull Honda garage tuned Max Verstappen's car for what the conditions on the track and in the air were going to be at the end of Q3 more than the beginning of it. It turned out into their favor. He put a flying lap through sector 2, and that basically spun him on his way onto P1. He will start there at a track where he has never led a single lap in his F1 career. So for Max Verstappen, if he were to get out and stay in P1 on the whole shot after lights out, if he were to get through the first lap, he would end up having led one career lap at Abu Dhabi, the traditional ending race, in a race that he usually performs well in. And of course, Max Verstappen being one of the greatest drivers currently in the F1 circuit. It ends Mercedes' run of being 1-2 in every Q3 session at Abu Dhabi in the turbo hybrid era. Of course, new cars next year, new engine designs, new aerodynamics, new car liveries. So it's going to be very interesting to see whether this was a telling story for Mercedes. Remember back earlier in the season, there was all the jokes about party mode has ended well, we're going to be able to see really hardcore next year. What can Mercedes do without party mode in the engines? Bottas finished in second. Lewis Hamilton returned after missing last week's race in Bahrain due to COVID-19. He turned out to be non-symptomatic and therefore was able to test negative twice before pre-practice. One occurred earlier this week. He finished in third. Lando Norris continued to show why he is a future star in F1, pulling off one of the best Q3s of his career. He went in P4 135.497. Carlos Sainz, his McLaren teammate, was sixth, just shortly ahead of AlphaTauri's Danny Kvyat. Lance Stroll finished in eighth. Sergio Perez will start from the back of the field, his teammate at Racing Point, after a number of engine issues. Racing Point leads McLaren by just 10 points for third place in the Constructors' Championship, and for these teams, that difference could mean millions. I mean, millions of dollars in team revenue. Charles Leclerc, the other one of the Ferrari drivers, and AlphaTauri's Pierre Gasly, one of the other young guns of Formula One, who won a race earlier this season, rounded out the top 10, but it was Verstappen at 135.246, putting himself on P1. Bottas in second, 135.271. Lewis Hamilton in third, 135.332, before Norris, Albon, and Sainz, Kvyat, Stroll, Leclerc, and Gasly rounded out the top 10. Not making it out of Q2 was Ocon, Ricciardo, Vettel, Giovinazzi, and Perez. So they will start 11th through 15th. The back of the field will be Raikkonen, Magnussen, George Russell back in his Williams, Pietro Fittipaldi serving in on the Haas Ferrari, and Nicholas Latifi finishes in 20th. Fittipaldi serving in the Haas Ferrari that is normally helmed by Romain Grosjean. Of course, Grosjean cannot compete because of that fiery crash that he had in Bahrain last weekend. You have seen, I'm sure, on social media, all of the videos and pictures that Grosjean has been putting out. He has been healing well, but he suffered second-degree burns to both of his hands. He still has them in bandages, but he is home. It is a testament to not just the track marshals, but to all the engineers for all of these F1 cars and just about every racing car in the world of auto sports that allows Romain Grosjean to go through what he did in that race and be able to just walk away with some bumps, bruises, and some burns on your hand that'll heal. It is amazing where we have come in the technology that is available to these race car drivers. The changes to the grid in terms of why Charles Leclerc finishes in 9th place was a 3-grid penalty for causing a collision at the end of P2. Perez and Magnussen were relegated to the back of the field because of engine issues. The last and final race of the 2020 F1 season, the grid is set for Abu Dhabi tomorrow on the Yas Marina circuit, and that is, without question, one of my favorite races of the season. If you have not seen the Abu Dhabi race, you need to tune in. You will be in for something very special. Lights out early, 8:10 a.m. Eastern time on the networks of ESPN. We are going to take a very quick break, our first break of the session, and we'll be right back. You're watching Sports World Weekly. I'm talking about one of my old shows for a second. Sports World Weekly on the Sports Fan Base Network, Rhode Island. Welcome back to Sports World Weekly on SFBN Rhode Island. I slipped there and said World Sports Show. It is an old show, actually an old show for me now, still a current show in Philadelphia that I was fortunate enough to be a part of many times over the years as I grew and built my career. Shout out to Charlie Plow and John DeCrisio down there in Philadelphia. Love you guys. Miss you guys very much. Hopefully 2020 will close its book now that the vaccine is coming out, and we'll all be able to get together very soon, and we'll have to do a combined World Sports Show, Sports World Weekly mega show or something to make it all work out. But that was my slip of the tongue for the weekend. Match day 6 of 6 in the UEFA Champions League. Books closed. It is over in terms of the group stage. No really shocking results out of match day 6. Dortmund 2-1 over Zenit. Club Brugge and Lazio tying 2-2. Chelsea seemed to set their foot back a little bit from pushing hard on the gas pedal. They just needed to get through the match. They did. 1-1 draw with Krasnodar. Juventus over Barcelona 3-0, and everybody's going to talk about Messi, Ronaldo, and Ronaldo is better than Messi now because look at what Barcelona is doing. Barcelona's in disarray. We know Barcelona's a dumpster fire. The president of the club is gone. The board of governors needs to turn things around. Ronald Koeman needs to go, and they need to bring players back. They need to get somebody to do something. Now, we know it's not going to be Pep Guardiola because he just signed another contract to stay at Manchester City. So the question then ends up becoming, does Leo Messi now leave at the end of this year and reunite with Pep Guardiola in Manchester City, with players like Suarez and Aguero and many others? So you're going to have to look and see what's going to happen with Manchester City in the offseason. It's going to be a very interesting tell for them, but they lost that match to Juventus 3-0. Red Bull Leipzig did it again. I said countless times through the match days, I said this in our Champions League preview show, Red Bull Leipzig was the team to watch. You needed to be careful with this team. 3-2 over Manchester United. They relegate Manchester United to Europa League. Red Bull Leipzig goes on in that game. Dinamo Kyiv over Fenerbahce 1-0. Sevilla pulled the upset over League One champions Rennes 3-1, helping themselves out. Liverpool saw their way out against Michelin 1-1. Paris Saint-Germain exploded on Istanbul Başakşehir in a game that had so much controversy to it. It was completed the next day. The game was abandoned after there was allegations that the fourth official, the official on the sidelines, the one who holds the board up for substitutions, shouted a racial epithet at one of the Istanbul Başakşehir assistant coaches. There was arguments on the sideline in the technical area. There was arguments then on the field around it. There was discussions with UEFA staff officials regarding it. Eventually, what ended up happening is both the Paris Saint-Germain players and the Istanbul Başakşehir players walked off the pitch completely. They left from the field. They went into their locker rooms. It was then decided by both of the teams through their coaches and their captains. Neither team wanted to continue the match under the cloud of scrutiny that there had been a racial incident that had occurred. The UEFA decided to abandon the match and that it would be played the next day. They did so with a completely brand new officiating crew. So no officials who had been a part of the incident that occurred returned to finish the game. They did it with a completely brand new crew. In the midst of all that, Neymar goes off the rails and PSG wins 5-1. Atalanta skips by Ajax 1-0. Bayern, no problems with Lokomotiv Moscow, 2-0 over them. Real Madrid, obviously no problems with Mönchengladbach, 2-0 over them. Atletico Madrid also found their way past Red Bull Salzburg, 2-0. Man City, 3-0 over Olympique Marseille, seeing Man City through. Shakhtar Donetsk and Inter Milan tied at 0. Porto, held up by a red card issued to Olympiacos. Ruben Cernedo in the 79th was able to have them stay afloat, and they finished with a 2-0 victory. So the way it breaks down, top two out of each group go forward. The third place team gets relegated into the Europa League group stage competition to fill out those, and then goes through that process. So Bayern and Atletico Madrid are through into the knockout rounds. Real Madrid and Mönchengladbach from Group B are through. Man City and Porto in Group C. Liverpool and Atalanta in Group D. Chelsea, Sevilla in Group E. Dortmund and Lazio in Group F. Juventus and Barcelona sneak by, tied on points. And then PSG and Red Bull Leipzig. So dropped to the Europa League group stage goes Red Bull Salzburg, Shakhtar Donetsk, Olympiacos, Ajax, Krasnodar, Club Brugge, Dynamo Kyiv, and Manchester United. That means the European competition season for Lokomotiv Moscow, Inter Milan, Olympique Marseille, Michelin, Rennes, Zenit St. Petersburg, Fenerbahce, and Istanbul Başakşehir are over. You are done. Congratulations that you made it. Good luck with the rest of your domestic seasons. Group stage complete. That means we head into the knockout stages. The bracket still not completely set yet. There are some tiebreaker countbacks to be worked on. Of course, next week, we will have a breakdown on the draw that sets the knockout round stages for Champions League. We're going to take a second break. You're watching Sports World Weekly on the Sports Fan Base Network, Rhode Island. When we come back, we'll set you up for all the Premier League action, including the big one, the Manchester Derby this weekend, Manchester City, Manchester United. You're watching Sports World Weekly on SFPN Rhode Island. Welcome back to Sports World Weekly on SFBN Rhode Island. Matt Gillis with you here each and every Saturday, 10 a.m. Little promo there for Titletown Throwdown with Nick LeBlanc. Thursdays at 7 p.m. Thank you, Nick, for allowing me to be a part of your show earlier this week. It was a lot of fun. We got a chance to talk about the designated hitter rule in Major League Baseball, whether we think it's a good thing or not, whether it should be something here to stay, and whether it should be a part of every single game, both in the American and National League throughout the coming seasons. We also talked to all the NFL. So for a good preview on the Sunday games and Monday games of this week in the NFL, go check out the final segment of Titletown Throwdown from this past Thursday. Of course, you can watch all SFBN Rhode Island shows. If you miss them when they air, just click on the logo of the show if you see it in the scroller on our main page, or click our live shows and podcasts button on the top menu bar, and you can be able to access on demand every SFBN Rhode Island show. All right, Premier League, and I would like for West Ham to please go back to being West Ham United. I don't know what in the world you guys are on this season, but it looks very weird compared to how the last couple of years have been for the Hammers. You beat Leeds United 2-1 yesterday. You're sitting in 5th place in the Premier League right now. You are 1 point behind Leicester City. You are 2 points behind Chelsea. You are 4 points from the top of the table. This is a team that in the past couple of years staved off relegation, that had to fight to get out of the bottom, that looked like they might be going down. And mind you, West Ham plays in one of the biggest and most beautiful stadiums in the Premier League, in that of London Stadium, which was the home of the 2012 Olympics. So all I have to say is, whatever you're doing, West Ham, could you please stop, because you are upsetting the Premier League and you don't look like yourselves. That being said, on the other side of it, West Ham, congratulations for what you have done this season, because you've actually made yourself stop being the laughing stock of the Premier League. On the other hand, one match earlier today, Aston Villa skipping by Wolves 1-0. Red cards dished out in a testy final 10 minutes of the match. On the 85th, one to Aston Villa's Douglas Luiz, and then Joao Moutinho getting one at 90+5. So in stoppage time at the final seconds of the game. So one each aside. Both of those players obviously will miss their next matches. 3 games still to come on the day: Newcastle and West Brom, Man United and Man City, the Manchester Derby. It is an interesting situation when you're talking about a legendary game like this. Man City and Man United are separated by 1 point in the table. They are 9th and 7th, respectively. Now, yes, Manchester United is only 5 points from Tottenham at the top. But you're talking about Man City and Man United being 9th and 7th in the table. That's not where they normally are. That's not what we normally see. And that makes a very interesting situation, that we are talking about a legendary game like the Manchester Derby with 2 teams that are in the middle of the pack. We'll see how that all works out, but it is still the Manchester Derby. 12:30 p.m. Eastern today. Manchester United won both Premier League meetings against Manchester season last year. They've won 3 in a row in competition between their crosstown rivals. Manchester City, though, have won 7 Premier League games away at Old Trafford, more than any other visiting side, with 6 of their 7 victories coming in the last 9 seasons. Just 21% of Manchester United's Premier League points have been won from home games. They are 4 of 19, the lowest share in the division so far this season. Manchester United won a league high 15 points from losing positions this year, with their victory against West Ham last time out, putting them on top of the particular stat all time. Losing points, 385. That means that you were down in the game, came back to draw and hold out for the point and or go ahead to win and get the 3. Manchester City have also lost 5 Premier League games away so far in 2020, last losing more in a single calendar year way back in 2015 when they lost 7. If they were to lose today to Manchester United, that would put them at 6 this year and 1 away from tying that dubious record. Games on the board tomorrow, and actually as we sit, we will talk about this to the fact that Newcastle, in the first minute of their match, have gone ahead 1-0. Miguel Almiron getting a goal. Newcastle leading West Brom 1-0. That match is in the 27th minute now. Games tomorrow: Everton and Chelsea, Southampton, Sheffield United, Crystal Palace, Tottenham, Fulham against Liverpool, Leicester City, Brighton, Arsenal, and Burnley to close out what is match day 12 of the 38 that we will see in the 2020-2021 Premier League season. As, of course, I mentioned at the beginning of the show, eyes focused on match day 15, the Boxing Day extravaganzas, and we will preview all of those on next week's Sports World Weekly show. You're going to want to tune in and check that out. As we mentioned, Tottenham sitting top of the table on 24 points. They are level with Liverpool at 24. Chelsea 2 back in third. Leicester City sitting 3 back in 4. And the West Ham Hammers 4 back in 5th place. They are level with Southampton on 20. Manchester United, Aston Villa, Man City, Everton close out the top 10 in the Premier League. We're going to take a break. You're watching Sports World Weekly on SFBN Rhode Island. Welcome back to Sports World Weekly on the Sports Fan Base Network Rhode Island. Matt Gillis with you here. And I want to talk for a moment about the National Women's Soccer League. Now, we covered earlier this year the issues that happened in Utah with Deloy Hansen and the Utah Royals. More specifically, Utah Soccer Holdings LLC, the whole entire parent company, because they also own Real Salt Lake in the MLS, Real Salt Lake 2, the otherwise known as Real Salt Lake Monarchs, which is a USL team, which is a minor league feeder team for Real Salt Lake, Rio Tinto Stadium, where Real Salt Lake plays, Zions Bank Stadium, where Real Salt Lake Monarchs play, and the Real Salt Lake Academy and the entire grounds of that academy, which also hosted the NWSL Challenge Cup earlier this year when the NWSL made its return to play before the fall pod season occurred. The Utah Royals are not a legacy team. The team came into existence 3 years ago when one of the original teams of the NWSL, FC Kansas City, was sold by its ownership. It got sold to Utah. Utah immediately changed the game in the NWSL. While they might not have had the success on the field that Kansas City did in winning 2 championships, they changed the way in which players were treated, or so it seems. They got their own training facilities. They got their own locker room. They got their own designed clubhouse. They had all sorts of their own amenities and areas. They were being given housing. They were being given cars. There was all sorts of things that were going on to assist the players. And the fans came out too. And it showed something different. That there was going to be an opportunity for there to be soccer in Utah, women's professional soccer in Utah, that was going to look different than it did in any other place in the NWSL, save for Portland, who are owned by the Portland Thorns. The Portland Thorns are owned by the Portland Timbers, and who Merritt Paulson and everyone in Portland does a phenomenal job in making sure that the Timbers and the Thorns are equal, are level with each other. And that's produced Thorns championships and great players that have come out of that program, out of that franchise, who have gone on to now being U.S. women's national team stars. Something happened in the NWSL this week that I never thought I would be reporting on. In all the years, 19, 20, that we've had women's professional soccer in the United States now, I have never seen a team get sold back to where it came from. And sold back better than the situation that it left in. That happened earlier this week. The Utah Royals were sold back to Kansas City to Angie Long and Chris Long of Promo Square Capital Investments and Brittany Matthews, a former professional soccer player who was a fitness guru, a kinesiologist, and just so happens to have a pretty cool fiance named Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, that Patrick Mahomes, the Super Bowl winning quarterback of the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, here's something else that happened this week that became even cooler with that announcement. Angie Long and Brittany Matthews were listed as the majority partners. They then went on to name a team president who is also a woman, which means the 3 highest positions in a National Women's Soccer League team that will play next season. LA comes on in 2022. Will be led by women. I don't know how many more times I can do a segment like this. I don't know how many more times I can sit here and say, it's 2020. But here's what bothers me. Why did the rest of sports media act like this was some amazing thing that we've never seen happen before? There are women owners in the WNBA. There are women coaches in the WNBA. There are women general managers in the WNBA. There have been women general managers and women head coaches in the WUSA, in the WPS, in the NWSL. Sky Blue FC, I'm looking at you. So why is it that sports media seems to think that when something happens that involves women, it's all of a sudden groundbreaking? Sure. Is Kansas City being owned by Angie Long and Brittany Matthews and the others who they have involved with them, amazing that it's 2 women listed as the majority partners of the team? Absolutely. It's great. And it's about damn time. Angel City FC comes into play in 2022. They have upwards right now of about 20 different investors who are women. They are running that team like a European professional soccer team. Everybody buy a share. You're in. You're considered an owner. But the fact of the matter is the majority shareholders are women. Their board is women. Their team presidency and all of the people who will be involved in the top level decision making of the team are women. In 1 month and 10 days from now, we will have a woman as the vice president of the United States. This is happening. This is a thing. This is where we are going as a society, as a country. It's where we should have been decades ago. I love reporting on the NWSL. I love reporting on women's soccer. I love reporting on women's sports. Not because they are women, but because they are amazing athletes. And if you are not tuning in and watching the WNBA or the NWSL or NPF softball or the Athletes Unlimited softball tour that happened or any of the Olympic sports on the women's side of it, our U.S. women's gymnastics team, my God, the talent level that has been there for the last decade plus, and the talent level that is to come. And for those who don't make the U.S. women's national team for gymnastics, because the FIG keeps wanting to seemingly cut the number of athletes you're allowed to have, go watch NCAA. Go watch NCAA gymnastics. Because you are missing out on extremely talented gymnasts who, for many of them, that is the last time they will compete. There is no pro gymnastics tour. There is no pro gymnastics league. You hit elite, you get your chance to make the Olympics. If you don't, you go to college. And whether it's Maddie Quarles or Riley McCusker or Abby Walker or whoever it might be. Obviously, everyone saw the viral videos of Caitlin Ohashi at UCLA. You are missing out on something. Women's sports is something to be revered and amazed, but at the same time, every time something happens in women's sports, it is not groundbreaking. It is just the way it should be. What happened this week in Kansas City was amazing for Kansas City. You are getting your team back. You are getting your championships back. Kansas City has now become another town that has added another pro sports team to its resume. You have Sporting Kansas City. You now have the Kansas City NWSL team. You have the Kansas City Royals. You have the Kansas City Chiefs. I am sorry you do not have a basketball team in there. And I'm sorry you do not have a hockey team in there. Those things used to exist once before. Maybe they will again. But here's something else that Kansas City holds that a lot of people don't realize. And why Kansas City deserves more than anyone to have an NWSL soccer team. Kansas City is the home of the United Soccer Coaches Association. That right there says it all. if you don't have an MLS team, an NWSL team, a USL team, a WPSL team, and a huge, phenomenal youth soccer program in the home of the National Coaching Association for Soccer, you're doing something wrong. Thank you to Angie and Chris Long at Palmer Square Capital Investments. Thank you to Brittany Matthews. Thank you to everyone who started the Bring NWSL Back to Kansas City Twitter and kept tweeting throughout the years of trying to get the NWSL to come back. And thank you for the fact that you did not give up. In 2017, when your team got taken from you in a bad business deal by the previous owners who really didn't seem to know what they were doing, you didn't just sulk off into the backgrounds. You celebrated your team's championships and you fought to get them back, and you succeeded. 2021 will start with 2 brand new NWSL teams. The new team in Kansas City and Racing Louisville FC. And while we don't add a team because of that, and we still sit at 10, when we get to next season, when we get to the 2022 season, and we bring on Angel City FC in Los Angeles, and the fact that we will get to an 11th team and a 10th season of women's professional soccer in the United States, for someone like me personally, who has been around this game for half of my life, that moment of getting to a 10th season in women's professional soccer in the United States, that will be groundbreaking. We're going to take one final break. You're watching Sports World Weekly on the Sports Fan Base Network, Rhode Island. Welcome back to Sports World Weekly on the Sports Fan Base Network, Rhode Island. The NBA preseason got underway. It's kind of weird. I feel like we just crowned the NBA champion, but it was a little bit longer than that. It's been a couple months, 71 days to be exact. But the NBA preseason got underway, and it picked up right where the NBA season left off. Los Angeles Lakers having absolutely no problems with their roommates for at least a little while longer. The LA Clippers dispatching them 87-81. What do you want to say about this one? I mean, just what do you want to say? The Lakers and the Clippers. It's Lakers Clippers. It's Lakers Clippers. That's all there is to say about it. LeBron James did LeBron James things. He didn't play. It's preseason. Not going to blame him. He's got to wait for the regular season. He doesn't want to get himself injured. Portland Trailblazers 127-102 over the Sacramento Kings. The Houston Rockets still trying to figure out whether the beard will be there or not. 125-104 over the Chicago Bulls. New York Knicks over the Detroit Pistons 90-84. Orlando Magic over the Atlanta Hawks 116, 112. Games today: Toronto and Charlotte, Indiana, Cleveland, Oklahoma City, San Antonio, Dallas Mavericks and the Milwaukee Bucks, Memphis Grizzlies, Minnesota Timberwolves, Denver Nuggets, and the Golden State Warriors. We'll see how Steph Curry feels with his comments about a fresh restart after they went 15 and 56 or whatever it was last year. And Steph Curry only played 5 games in the season. So we'll see how that goes. Phoenix and Utah is the one other game left tomorrow. On Sunday, Magic and the Hawks, Wizards and the Nets, New York Knicks, Detroit Pistons, Houston Rockets, Chicago Bulls, Lakers, Clippers play again, and Sacramento and Portland play one more time. You're going to see a lot of doubles in the NBA schedule this year. There's COVID protocols in place regarding that, and it's one of these things that they're going to do. So don't be surprised if you say, that game just happened yesterday. Am I watching a replay? No, you're not. There's double ups that are going to happen all over the place. College football. Where do we even start with this week in college football? Ohio State cancels their game against Michigan. Then it said that Ohio State has 5 games played. They're not eligible for the Big Ten championship. Indiana wins the Big Ten East. It'll be Indiana Northwestern in the Big Ten championship. Then the Big Ten reverses themselves and say, well, Ohio State's undefeated, so keeping them out of the Big Ten championship wouldn't be the right thing to do, especially if they were to lose against Michigan. They would end up with the same record as Indiana, but because Ohio State beat Indiana, that would be the tiebreaker on head-to-head, and therefore Ohio State would go to the Big Ten championship game anyway with 5 wins. They would have a 5-1 record. Did you follow that? Do you need a flow chart? Because to figure out the 2020 college football season in the Big Ten, the ACC, and the SEC, you might need a whiteboard and a slide rule and a couple of mathematics degrees. Instead, Ohio State goes. They remove the rule. Ohio State goes and they will play the Big Ten championship next weekend in Indianapolis against Northwestern. Now, get your whiteboard ready, get your abacus ready, get your mathematicians ready, because here is where it gets really fun. Ohio State loses the Big Ten championship game to Northwestern. They go to 5-1. Northwestern does not go to the college football playoff. Notre Dame loses to Clemson. Alabama loses to Florida. Alabama has a loss. Clemson has a loss. Notre Dame has a loss. Ohio State has a loss. Who do you put in the top 4 and send to the college football playoffs? Because also, only one of the 4 of them that in Clemson would then have a conference championship, which is the quote-unquote deciding factor when there's a tie in the college football playoff selection committee. And you've talked about Ohio State, Alabama, and Notre Dame all losing in their conference championship games, albeit against teams that are also aptly ranked along with them. So who do you put? in the college football playoff game. Here's what I think is going to happen. Alabama's going to beat Florida. Notre Dame's going to beat Clemson again. Ohio State's going to beat Northwestern. And the question becomes, is Clemson, who lost twice to Notre Dame and didn't win a conference championship, the fourth best team in the nation? Or is it possible that there is another team who deserves to be fourth best? This has been a wild, absolutely wild run to the finish of the college football season. The way it stacks up right now, Alabama is number 1 at 9-0. Notre Dame is 2. Clemson is 3, 9-1. That one loss is the loss to Notre Dame. Ohio State is 4 with their 5-0 record. Florida is 6 at 8-1 because we mentioned Florida. We're not going to talk about Texas A&M, and they're at 7-1. But here's where else you have going on. You've got Cincinnati sitting down there at 8-0. You've got Coastal Carolina sitting down there at 13 at 10-0. You've got USC sitting down there at 4-0. You've got Colorado down there at 4-0. Is USC and the Pac-12 good enough that they should get up and in? Is Cincinnati the mid-major? And I know they're not in a mid-major conference, but they're not in a Power 5. Is Cincinnati that team that's going to sneak in? This is how weird this season has been. So let's do this one again. Alabama loses, they go to 9-1. Notre Dame loses, they go to 10-1. Clemson wins, they go to 10-1. Ohio State loses, they go to 5-1. Florida wins, they go to 9-1. Alabama, Notre Dame, Clemson, Ohio State, Florida, all with one loss. If Texas A&M wins the Big 12 championship, they would be 8-1. If Cincinnati were to win their conference championship, they would be the lone undefeated, along with Coastal Carolina, who's down at 13th. But they would be the lone undefeated out of a major conference unless USC wins the Pac-12 championship. But then is USC that good, and has the Pac-12 been that good this year that they could obviously be a playoff team? In a normal year, the conference championship season leading into the postseason is what's referred to as Bowl Mania. Like we have March Madness. The entire 2020 college football season has been mania. Alabama plays Arkansas today. That game tips off at noon. Georgia and Mizzou, Illinois, Northwestern, Utah, Colorado, Coastal Carolina against Troy, North Carolina, Miami, Wisconsin, Iowa, Oklahoma State against Baylor, LSU, Florida, USC, UCLA in the crosstown battle, San Diego State, BYU. Games that were canceled this weekend: Michigan, Ohio State, Oklahoma, West Virginia, Purdue, Indiana, Cincinnati, Tulsa, Texas, Kansas, Mississippi, and Texas A&M. And that is why college football is in a wacky, wacky state. We're going to take one final break, and I'll be back with my final thoughts. You're watching Sports World Weekly on SFPN Rhode Island. Welcome back. Once again, you're watching Sports World Weekly on SFPN Rhode Island. Matt Gillis with you. Thank you so much to each and every one of you who have tuned in and brought us into your homes during this very interesting year. It has been an interesting year for us as a show, as a network. We've got one more to go before we put a wrap on 2020. Next week's show is going to be a very special one. Of course, you're going to want to tune in 10 a.m. We will give you a recap on the 2020 season, and I will bring you my thoughts on the 10 greatest moments in sports in 2020. I can guarantee you, there will be at least one Boston-related moment, and there will be at least one women's soccer-related moment. There's your trivia question for the rest of the week. See if you can figure out what Boston sports moment of 2020. I will give you a hint right now. It does not have to do with Tom Brady. And what women's soccer moment I might be talking about. Until then, thank you all for tuning in today. I will see you Monday, 4 p.m. We will be back online full-time with And That's the Game. Until then, take care, stay safe, wash your hands, wear your mask, listen to your public health professionals. We will all pull through this and get back into stadiums cheering on our favorite teams and players very soon. Until then, I will see you Monday, 4 p.m. and on Saturdays, always 10 a.m. for Sports World Weekly. Good night.